Two 18-year-old athletes went near the water with people they trusted. Neither came home. One disappeared from a crowded Mississippi island on the 4th of July. His friends returned without him. His phone and keys came back, but Nolan Wells did not. 2 days later, a park ranger found his body near the edge of Horn Island, and the questions began almost immediately. 3 months earlier in Texas, Daniel Erving jumped from a railroad bridge into Lake Ray Hubbard with 2 other teenagers. According to the medical examiner, Daniel surfaced once, called for help, and vanished beneath the water. But the 2 people with him did not call 911. Police allege they drove away, discarded Daniel's clothes and phone, and deleted messages. Then came 2 arrests, not for murder, not for manslaughter, for allegedly tampering with evidence. Those arrests did not answer what happened to Daniel. Instead, they created a disturbing new question and changed how people looked at Nolan's still unresolved death. When a young man disappears near water, how much can investigators trust the story told by the people who came back? Tonight, we will separate verified facts from allegations, examine what the arrests actually mean, and reveal why these 2 cases, though legally unconnected, have become impossible for many families to view separately. Before we begin, these are active and evolving investigations. No one has been charged with causing either young man's death. The people accused in the Daniel Erving case are presumed innocent unless proven guilty, and the juvenile involved has not been publicly identified because of age protections. This documentary does not claim that the 2 deaths are connected. They happened in different states, in different months, under different circumstances. The connection is not a conspiracy. It is a question of evidence, accountability, and what happens when the only surviving witnesses make decisions that complicate the search for truth. By the end of this video, you will understand what police say happened to Daniel, why his family rejects the idea that the case is settled, what the independent autopsy did and did not reveal about Nolan, and why the phrase accidental drowning can describe a medical conclusion without resolving every human question surrounding a death. And stay with this story until the final section, because one detail in Daniel's autopsy report explains why the arrests may feel explosive while still falling far short of proving homicide. Chapter 1. 2 names, 2 futures. To understand why these cases captured national attention, we have to begin before the water, before the missing person alerts, before the press conferences, and before strangers online began turning incomplete timelines into confident theories. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old, from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. He had played football at Ocean Springs High School and continued as a wide receiver at Southwest Mississippi Community College. He was approaching his 19th birthday and preparing to return for another season. His parents described a young man who encouraged people, brought energy into a room, and carried ambitions much larger than the island where his life ended. Daniel Erving was also 18. He was a high school senior in North Texas, an honor roll student and a member of his school's swim team. Family members sometimes called him Mike. Those details would later become central to their doubts. How, they asked, could a strong, healthy swimmer enter a lake with 2 companions and simply disappear while both companions made it back? Athletic ability does not make anyone immune to drowning. Open water is not a swimming pool. Cold shock, hidden currents, exhaustion, panic, an awkward impact, intoxication, injury, or a sudden medical crisis can overwhelm even experienced swimmers. That fact matters. But another fact matters too. Families do not assess tragedy only through statistical possibility. They assess it through behavior. Who called for help, who stayed, who searched, who told the truth immediately, who preserved the dead person's belongings and who did not. Nolan and Daniel were not famous before they died. They became public names because the circumstances surrounding their final hours appeared to contain gaps. Once those gaps became visible, every delayed call, missing message, conflicting account, and unreleased report took on enormous weight. This is where true crime storytelling can become dangerous. Suspicion is not evidence. A strange decision is not automatically proof of murder. A grieving family's questions are not the same as a prosecutor's case. But dismissing those questions too quickly can be equally damaging, especially when physical evidence is limited, and the last known witnesses control the first version of events. The two cases would soon follow very different legal paths. Daniel's case produced arrests, Nolan's did not. Yet the arrests in Texas would give the public a concrete example of something Nolan's family feared in Mississippi. That what happens after a person vanishes can permanently shape what investigators are able to learn about what happened before. The next part begins with a holiday trip involving hundreds of people, and one young man who somehow became separated from the group that brought him there. Chapter 2. The 4th of July on Horn Island. Horn Island sits several miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It is part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore, long, narrow, exposed, and reachable primarily by boat. On a normal day, it can feel remote. On the 4th of July, however, the island can attract large groups of boaters looking for an open beach, music, and celebration. On July 4, 2026, Nolan traveled to Horn Island with friends. Reports describe a gathering of several hundred people. In that environment, groups mingle, people move between boats, phones may be left behind to avoid water damage, and return plans can become informal. Those ordinary features of a beach gathering are important because they provide a plausible explanation for how friends can lose track of one another. They also create investigative chaos. At approximately 3 p.m., Nolan was reportedly last seen on the island. The account initially relayed by the Jackson County Sheriff was that Nolan chose to remain behind, believing he would return to the mainland with someone else. One friend later publicly claimed that Nolan declined repeated requests to board the group's boat and said he would catch another ride. According to that account, the group's boat was taking on water and required assistance. Attention shifted toward getting people and the vessel safely away from the island. In a crowded, fluid setting, the friend said, it was not unusual for someone to return with a different group. But once the boats reached the mainland, Nolan was not there. At first, uncertainty can masquerade as reassurance. Maybe he left with someone else. Maybe his phone was on another boat. Maybe he was already onshore and simply unreachable. Every minute spent testing those possibilities is understandable, until it becomes clear that no one can locate him. Nolan's mother was notified that night. The Coast Guard and other agencies became involved. A multi-agency search began, involving local authorities, state resources, federal personnel, and the National Park Service. On the morning of July 6, a park ranger found Nolan's body in the water near the northwestern tip of Horn Island. The discovery ended the search for Nolan. It did not answer how he died. Authorities initially indicated that drowning appeared possible and said they did not have evidence of foul play. His friends were described as cooperating, but the family's concerns grew around the sequence of events. Why did Nolan stay? Was it truly his choice? Who saw him after 3 p.m.? Why were his phone and keys not with him? Were messages missing? Did anyone witness an argument? How much of the timeline had been reconstructed from direct evidence? And how much depended on the memories of people who had been drinking, socializing, moving between groups, or trying to leave a crowded island? None of those questions proves that anyone harmed Nolan, But each question matters because death in open water often erases evidence. Decomposition can obscure injuries. Currents can move a body. Salt water can damage electronics. Witness memories can drift, merge, or harden after people compare stories. The family hired civil rights attorney Ben Crump and asked for an independent investigation. Public attention surged. The case began to carry not only forensic questions but racial and historical weight. Nolan was black. Many of the young people around him were white. And the death occurred in Mississippi, a state whose history makes some families wary of accepting reassurance without transparency. The responsible position is neither to assume a racial crime nor to mock the family for considering that possibility. It is to demand that the evidence be examined thoroughly enough that conclusions are earned rather than merely announced. And while Nolan's family waited for answers, another family in Texas was already living through a different version of the same nightmare. Chapter 3. Daniel's final trip to Lake Ray Hubbard. On April 13, 2026, Daniel Erving was last seen with 19-year-old Lucas Roper and a teenage juvenile. The three went to the area of Lake Ray Hubbard, a large reservoir east of Dallas. According to the arrest affidavit, later described by multiple news organizations, all three young men jumped from a railroad bridge near Miller Road. Bridge jumping can look deceptively simple: a few seconds of falling, a splash, then the swim back. But the risks include submerged debris, shallow areas, disorientation on impact, strong currents, steep banks, and the physical shock of striking the water at speed. The medical examiner's later account said Daniel entered the water, surfaced once, and called for help. Then he became submerged and did not resurface. Pause on that moment. A friend is visible. He is in distress. He calls for help. Then the surface closes over him. What happened next is the reason this case became far more than a drowning report. Authorities allege the two surviving teenagers did not immediately report the incident. They left. Daniel remained in the lake. His family did not receive the kind of call every parent would expect if a child vanished in front of friends. Instead, Daniel was reported missing, and 4 days passed before his body was recovered on April 17. The allegations go further. Investigators say Daniel's clothing was discarded in a tree line near the bridge. His phone was allegedly thrown from the moving vehicle. Roper allegedly deleted communications with Daniel from his own device because, according to the affidavit, he expected an investigation and did not want to get into trouble. Roper allegedly told detectives during a voluntary interview that he panicked after Daniel drowned. Panic is real. Human beings do not always respond rationally to trauma. A frightened teenager may flee an accident, hide underage drinking, conceal trespassing, or destroy evidence out of fear that adults will blame him for a death he did not cause. But panic is an explanation, not an automatic excuse. When panic leads to discarded property, deleted communications, silence, and a missing person remaining undiscovered for days, investigators have to determine whether the behavior concealed an accident or concealed something more. That distinction is the central mystery of Daniel's case. The medical examiner ultimately ruled Daniel's cause of death drowning, and the manner accidental. The report said that, despite initial suspicions, there were no current suspicions of foul play. It also left open the possibility that the cause or manner could be amended if new information emerged. For authorities, this was a forensic conclusion supported by the evidence available at that time. For Daniel's mother, it was not an emotional conclusion she could accept. She asked the question that would echo across news conferences. If the two survivors were innocent of wrongdoing, why discard Daniel's phone and clothes, delete messages, leave without reporting what happened, and fail to call his family? Then, Nearly 3 months after Daniel died, police arrested both surviving teenagers, not for causing his death, but for what investigators allege they did afterward. And that legal distinction changes everything. Chapter 4. What the two arrests actually mean. In July 2026, Lucas Roper and the juvenile were arrested on allegations of tampering with physical evidence. In Texas, tampering with evidence can be charged when a person, knowing that an investigation or official proceeding is pending or likely, alters, destroys, or conceals a record, document, or object with the intent to impair its availability as evidence. The charge does not require prosecutors to prove murder. It does not mean police have concluded that Daniel was attacked. It focuses on the alleged handling of evidence after the critical event. That is why headlines describing 2 arrests in the drowning death can mislead viewers. The arrests are connected to Daniel's death, but they are not homicide charges. They do not establish that either accused person caused Daniel to enter the water, prevented him from resurfacing, or intended for him to die. At the same time, the charges are not trivial. Daniel's phone could contain location records, messages, calls, photographs, videos, search history, and timestamps. His clothes might provide information about what happened before the jump, whether he was injured, what substances were present, or whether another person handled them. Deleted messages might reveal plans, arguments, fears, jokes, dares, or nothing criminal at all. Once evidence is discarded or altered, investigators may be forced to reconstruct events from fragments. Digital evidence can sometimes be recovered from backups, cloud services, the recipient's phone, carrier records, app servers, or forensic extraction. But recovery is not guaranteed. The more time passes, the more devices change, accounts synchronize, logs expire, and memories become contaminated by public reporting. The arrests therefore represent 2 things at once. First, they suggest investigators believe there is probable cause to allege deliberate interference with evidence. Probable cause is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but it is more than rumor. Second, they expose the boundary between suspicious conduct and provable homicide. A person can behave terribly after an accidental death. A person can conceal evidence because the evidence reveals a separate offense. A person can panic, make catastrophic choices, and still not be responsible for the death itself. Conversely, evidence tampering can also be part of an effort to hide a more serious crime. The charge alone cannot tell us which explanation is true. That is the uncomfortable answer promised in the opening. The arrests feel like confirmation that something was deeply wrong. Yet legally, they confirm only that authorities allege evidence was concealed or destroyed. They intensify the mystery without resolving it. Daniel's family has called for stronger charges and an independent investigation. Their position is understandable. The behavior alleged in the affidavit appears incompatible with ordinary friendship and basic human duty. But prosecutors must prove each element of any charge with admissible evidence. Moral outrage can motivate investigation. It cannot replace evidence in court. Cases like this are often distorted by clipped videos and viral posts. If you value documentaries that clearly separate what is confirmed, what is alleged, and what remains unknown, subscribe and keep watching, because the next section explains why Daniel's autopsy may support an accident while still leaving his family with legitimate questions. Chapter 5. The Autopsy. An answer with an asterisk. An autopsy attempts to determine cause and manner of death. Cause refers to the injury or medical process that produced death, in Daniel's case, drowning. Manner classifies the circumstances: natural, accident, suicide, homicide, or undetermined. Daniel's manner was ruled accidental. That classification does not mean investigators know every second of what occurred. It means the medical examiner, considering the body, scene information, police interviews, and available evidence, found the death most consistent with an unintended drowning and did not identify evidence supporting homicide at that time. The report's reported narrative is stark. Daniel jumped from the bridge, surfaced once, called for help, and then went under. The others allegedly disposed of his belongings and did not report the incident, delaying recovery for 4 days. Police interviewed them. Despite initial suspicions, the examiner reported no current suspicion of foul play. How can those statements coexist? Because post-incident misconduct and cause of death answer different questions. Imagine a fatal car crash caused by weather. A passenger survives, panics, removes contraband from the vehicle, and lies about being present. The lying may be criminal, and the removed item may be evidence, but neither fact automatically changes the crash from an accident into a homicide. Now reverse the logic. Suppose a person intentionally causes a crash and then removes evidence. In that scenario, the tampering supports a larger criminal narrative. The same post-event behavior can occur after very different underlying events. Investigators need independent evidence connecting the conduct to the death. Daniel's swimming background complicates public perception, but does not decide the medical question. Strong swimmers drown. The jump itself may have caused disorientation or injury. Clothing can become heavy. The distance to safety may be greater than it appears. A swimmer who swallows water can panic quickly. Calling for help is itself evidence that Daniel experienced sudden distress. Yet the family's skepticism remains reasonable for another reason. The people who witnessed that distress allegedly removed evidence and stayed silent. Their alleged conduct deprived Daniel of an immediate rescue response and deprived investigators of a clean scene. Could a prompt emergency call have saved him? The public record does not establish that. By the time he failed to resurface, the opportunity may already have passed. But an immediate call could have triggered a faster recovery, secured the location, preserved belongings, documented witness conditions, and reduced uncertainty. The examiner included an important qualification. If additional information comes to light, the cause or manner can be amended. Medical rulings are not sacred declarations beyond revision. They are professional conclusions based on the evidence available. That sentence is not proof that the ruling will change. It is an acknowledgement that the case remains evidence-dependent. And this brings us back to Nolan Wells, whose independent autopsy did not classify his death as accidental, homicidal, or even definitively as drowning. It returned the answer families fear most: undetermined. Chapter 6. Nolan's independent autopsy. Nolan's family commissioned an independent examination after the state autopsy. Preliminary findings were presented publicly on July 22. The independent pathologist could not determine Nolan's cause or manner of death. Both remained undetermined pending further investigation. That outcome is not a hidden declaration of homicide. Undetermined means the available evidence was insufficient to classify the death reliably. It can reflect genuine ambiguity, not official suspicion of a particular person. The examination reportedly found no fractures and no clear deep injuries that established fatal trauma. A large area of reddish discoloration was noted on the back of the scalp, but decomposition made interpretation difficult. Discoloration can result from injury, post-mortem changes, pressure, blood settling, or other processes. Without preserved tissue and context, appearance alone may not identify when or how it formed. The independent examiner also faced major limitations. Nolan's body had been exposed to the environment. Decomposition had advanced. Internal structures and organs had been removed during the state examination. as is routine in autopsy practice. But that meant the second pathologist could not examine everything in its original condition. Questions involving drowning, subtle neck injury, toxicology, microscopic findings, and the exact timing of death could not be resolved from the second examination alone. This is why the official state autopsy, laboratory testing, scene reconstruction, phone analysis, and witness interviews are so important. One report may contain information another examiner did not have. The family has emphasized discrepancies. Nolan was reportedly photographed without a shirt earlier, yet found clothed. His phone and keys were with others. Some digital content appeared absent, and accounts differ over whether he willingly stayed behind. Public reports have also referred to a possible argument captured on video, though the significance and complete context of that footage have not been established publicly. Each discrepancy creates a branch in the timeline. If Nolan voluntarily stayed, who agreed to take him back? If he planned to leave with his original group, why was he not aboard? If he entered the water accidentally, where and when did that happen? If he was alone, why did no one see or hear distress at a gathering of hundreds? If witnesses did see something, why has a definitive account not emerged? And if his phone's contents changed, were items intentionally deleted, automatically expired, lost through account behavior, or misunderstood by people viewing an incomplete device history? These questions are not interchangeable with evidence, but they define what a competent investigation must test. The local district attorney has indicated that relevant facts could be presented to a grand jury after the investigation. Nolan's family and attorneys have pressed for federal involvement, transparency, and the release of records. A significant reward has been offered for useful information. Unlike Daniel's case, there have been no publicly announced arrests connected to Nolan's death as of this research date. The title of this documentary, therefore, does not mean two people were arrested for both deaths. The arrests occurred in Daniel's case. What changed for Nolan's case was the public frame. After seeing alleged evidence disposal lead to charges in Texas, people began asking whether every device, garment, video, and witness account in Mississippi had been secured before it could disappear. Chapter 7. Why water cases are so hard to prove. Water changes evidence. A body recovered quickly from a controlled environment may preserve injuries, biological material, and trace evidence. A body exposed to salt water, heat, wildlife, currents, and time presents a far more difficult puzzle. Tissue breaks down. Skin changes. Minor marks appear or disappear. Water enters airways after death under some circumstances, complicating simplistic assumptions. Toxicology samples may degrade. The place where a body is found may not be the place where the person entered the water. Drowning itself can be difficult to prove solely through autopsy. Medical examiners often combine findings with scene history and witness accounts. That creates a difficult dependency. If witness accounts are incomplete, dishonest, or delayed, the medical interpretation may rest on a compromised narrative. This does not mean every drowning with inconsistent witnesses is a homicide. It means witness credibility becomes part of the forensic foundation. In Daniel's case, the reported observation that he surfaced and called for help supports a drowning sequence. But that account also comes from the people accused of hiding evidence. Investigators must test their statements against phone locations, vehicle movement, recovered property, surveillance cameras, bridge access, water conditions, and any forensic findings. In Nolan's case, the search area, wind and current patterns, the location of his body, his clothing, possible alcohol or substances, and the last reliable sighting all matter. Investigators must distinguish direct witnesses from people repeating what they heard. They must reconstruct boat manifests that may never have existed formally. They must identify videos recorded casually in the background of unrelated celebrations. The public often asks, why don't they just check the cameras? On an island, there may be no comprehensive camera network. Hundreds of private phones may collectively contain the answer, but locating every recording is nearly impossible. Some people delete footage to free storage. Some fear becoming involved. Some do not realize a distant figure or passing boat matters. The strongest evidence may therefore be mundane: a time-stamped photograph, GPS metadata, a text saying who planned to ride with whom, a fuel receipt fixing a departure time, a Life 360 location, a boat's navigation track, or an image showing Nolan's clothing at a specific hour. This is also why public speculation can hurt. When witnesses are exposed to thousands of theories, their memories may become less reliable. People begin recalling what they later heard rather than what they originally saw. Innocent individuals receive threats. Investigators spend time disproving fabricated claims. The best contribution a viewer can make is not to identify a villain from a photograph. It is to preserve original evidence, report first-hand information through official channels, and avoid contacting families or witnesses for entertainment. Yet there is another layer to these cases: the moral gap between what the law can charge and what communities believe friendship required. Chapter 8. The Moral Question. What do friends owe each other? Even if Daniel's death was entirely accidental, the alleged response afterward is difficult to comprehend. A friend vanishes beneath the surface. The expected sequence is instinctive: shout, search, call emergency services, alert nearby people, remain at the scene, contact family, and tell investigators everything. Fear may distort that sequence, but discarding belongings and deleting communications crosses from passivity into alleged action. That is why the evidence-tampering arrests changed public reaction. They transformed vague suspicion into a formal accusation that the surviving companions did something prosecutors may argue was intended to impair an investigation. For Nolan's friends, the moral question is different. Public accounts say Nolan was urged to board but chose to stay. If that is true, his friends may be living with unbearable guilt over honoring a decision that seemed ordinary at the time. Adults regularly allow friends to change plans, accept another ride, or remain at a party. Tragedy can make a reasonable decision look negligent in hindsight. But Nolan was on an island, not at a house down the street. The last boat connection was a safety plan. If no confirmed person accepted responsibility for taking him back, leaving him carried a foreseeable risk. The law may distinguish sharply between a moral failure and a crime. Negligence, recklessness, abandonment, failure to report, evidence tampering, and homicide each require different facts and legal elements. A person can fail a friend without committing murder. A person can also create danger without intending death. Families often speak in the language of betrayal because legal categories cannot capture the emotional reality. Daniel's mother is not only asking what caused drowning, she is asking why her son was denied dignity and urgency after he called for help. Nolan's parents are not only asking whether water entered his lungs, they are asking how a group left an offshore island without confirming that their son had a safe return. Those questions may never fit neatly inside a charging document. This is one reason public pressure can be useful when disciplined. It can encourage agencies to share information, preserve evidence, and subject early assumptions to review. But pressure becomes destructive when it demands a predetermined conclusion. Justice is not achieved by replacing an untested accident narrative with an untested murder narrative. The standard should be consistent. Investigate the possibility of accident seriously. Investigate the possibility of foul play seriously and allow evidence, not social media allegiance, to decide between them. The final comparison reveals the most important difference between these cases. In one, the medical examiner had a reported eyewitness sequence. In the other, the final hours remain a blank space. That difference may determine whether either family ever receives a complete answer. Chapter 9. Same questions, different evidence. Place the cases side by side carefully. Daniel was reportedly seen entering the water. He was reportedly seen resurfacing and calling for help. 2 people were present during the critical moment. His body was recovered 4 days later. The medical examiner classified the death as accidental drowning. The surviving companions face evidence tampering allegations based on alleged disposal of belongings and deletion of communications. Nolan was last reliably placed on Horn Island around 3 p.m. The public record does not establish a confirmed witness to his entry into the water. His body was found 2 days later. The independent autopsy could not determine cause or manner. The official state findings had not been publicly released as of July 25. No arrests had been announced. Daniel's mystery is not primarily whether he entered the water. It is what happened immediately before, during and after his distress, and why the witnesses allegedly concealed evidence. Nolan's mystery begins earlier. Investigators must first establish where he went after the last sighting, who was with him, whether he intended to leave with another group, when he entered the water, and whether he entered voluntarily, accidentally, under impairment, during conflict, or after an injury. The cases also differ in the role of digital evidence. In Daniel's case, police allege affirmative acts, a phone thrown away and communications deleted. If proven, those acts can support the evidence tampering charges. In Nolan's case, the family has raised concerns about missing or deleted content, but the public evidence is less defined. A mutual forensic examination of the phone may clarify whether data was manually deleted, automatically removed, remotely altered, or simply absent because Nolan did not carry the device during the gathering. There is a temptation to use one case as proof of the other. That would be wrong. The fact that Daniel's companions allegedly tampered with evidence does not prove Nolan's friends did the same. The fact that Daniel was classified as an accidental drowning does not mean Nolan drowned accidentally. Similar patterns should guide questions, not substitute for case-specific proof. Still, comparison can expose investigative blind spots. Did authorities immediately seize and image relevant phones? Were all vehicles and boats identified? Were witnesses separated before interviews? Were social media stories, location records, and cloud backups preserved before they expired? Were water conditions modeled for the relevant hours? Were clothing and personal items documented through chain of custody? Did investigators distinguish what witnesses personally observed from what they later heard? Were initial assumptions about drowning allowed to narrow the inquiry too soon? These are not accusations. They are quality control questions. A strong investigation should be able to answer them. Chapter 10. The Internet builds a theory when official information moves slowly. The Internet fills the vacuum. A missing shirt becomes proof of a struggle. A deleted Snapchat becomes proof of conspiracy. A friend's awkward interview becomes proof of deception. Racial demographics become either proof of motive or, in the opposite direction, a reason to dismiss every concern as manufactured outrage. Real investigations cannot operate that way. Clothing may change during a beach day. Social media content can disappear through settings, expiration, account synchronization, or deletion. Nervous people appear suspicious on camera, especially when blamed publicly for a friend's death. Race can shape risk. trust, and investigative history without establishing the motive in a specific case. At the same time, viral attention has produced tangible benefits. It has generated tips, pushed for independent review, funded autopsy work, created rewards, and prevented the names of Nolan and Daniel from fading into local archives. The challenge is to preserve attention without manufacturing certainty. A responsible documentary should never tell viewers that a person is guilty because a thumbnail looks ominous. It should not display private individuals as killers when no homicide charge exists. It should not convert family suspicion into established fact. And it should not present an official ruling as infallible merely because it is official. The most honest conclusion at this stage is emotionally unsatisfying. Daniel's death is officially classified as an accidental drowning. 2 teenagers are accused of tampering with evidence afterward. Those allegations may expose cowardice, concealment, another offense, or facts relevant to the death, but the public record does not currently establish homicide. Nolan's cause and manner remain unresolved in the independent examination. Authorities have not publicly announced evidence of foul play or arrests. The absence of an arrest does not prove that nothing criminal happened. It also does not permit the public to invent a suspect. The role of viewers is not to deliver verdicts. It is to understand why the questions remain open and to insist that investigators preserve the difference between possibility and proof. Chapter 11. What happens next for Daniel's case? The criminal process surrounding the evidence tampering allegations will determine whether prosecutors can prove that the accused intentionally impaired evidence they knew would matter to an investigation. Court filings may reveal more about the phone, the clothing, the deleted communications, the timeline, and the defendant's explanations. The defense may argue panic, lack of criminal intent, incomplete allegations, or an alternative reason for the conduct. Prosecutors may present digital recovery, admissions, location data, or witness testimony. Because one accused person is a juvenile, parts of the process may remain confidential. The medical examiner's ruling can be revisited if new evidence materially changes the understanding of Daniel's death, but revision is possible, not inevitable. The current official conclusion remains accidental drowning. For Nolan, the path is broader and less defined. Investigators must integrate the state autopsy, toxicology, independent findings, digital evidence, witness interviews, videos, boat movements, environmental data, and the recovery location. The district attorney may present evidence to a grand jury, which can evaluate whether criminal charges are supported or whether additional investigation is needed. A grand jury review does not mean charges will follow. It can end without an indictment. But for the family, independent oversight may provide assurance that the case was not closed around an early assumption. The reward for information reflects another reality. Someone may possess a video or first-hand observation that appears insignificant. A person may remember seeing Nolan board or leave a boat. Someone may have footage of the shoreline, a dispute, a fall, a swimmer, or a vessel departing. Metadata may matter as much as the visible image. Anyone with genuine evidence should preserve the original file, avoid editing it, record how it was obtained, and provide it directly to investigators or the family's authorized legal team. Posting it first can strip context, trigger harassment, and compromise later testimony. The next major development in either case could transform the narrative. That is why every documentary description and pinned comment should include a research date and an update note. Viewers deserve to know when a story is still moving. Final reveal and conclusion at the beginning. We asked why 2 evidence tampering arrests changed how people viewed 2 separate deaths. The answer is not that the arrests solved both cases. They solved neither. What they changed was the meaning of the missing hours. Before the arrests, Daniel's case could be summarized as a tragic drowning witnessed by frightened teenagers. After the arrests, authorities were formally alleging that those witnesses discarded objects and deleted communications that might have helped explain the tragedy. The medical ruling remained accidental, but confidence in the narrative now had to coexist with accusations that evidence had been deliberately impaired. For Nolan's family, that development illustrated their deepest fear. When the truth depends on the people who returned, every phone, video, item of clothing, and first statement must be preserved before memory and evidence disappear. Daniel's autopsy contains the detail that keeps the case balanced between outrage and legal restraint. It says there were no current suspicions of foul play, yet it also acknowledges that the ruling may be amended if new information emerges. That is not a hidden accusation. It is forensic humility. Nolan's independent autopsy offers a different form of humility, undetermined. It does not tell the family that their son was murdered. It does not give them the comfort of a confirmed accident. It says the evidence, at least in that examination, could not finish the story. Two 18-year-old athletes entered ordinary summer settings and never came home. One case contains a witness cry for help followed by alleged concealment. The other contains a crowded island, an uncertain departure plan, and a final stretch of time no public account has yet explained. Justice may ultimately mean criminal accountability. It may mean confirmation of tragic accidents accompanied by accountability for what happened afterward. Or it may mean accepting that environmental damage and lost evidence have made complete certainty impossible. But justice cannot begin with a predetermined villain. It begins with preservation, transparent timelines, independent review, honest language, and the willingness to say three difficult words when the evidence does not yet support more. We do not know. For Daniel Erving's family, the arrests are not the end of the case. For Nolan Wells's family, the absence of arrests is not the end of the search. Both families are asking the same fundamental question, not only how their sons died, but whether every person who knew something did everything possible to bring the truth home. Nolan Wells and Daniel Erving were more than mysteries. They were sons, students, teammates, and young men whose futures ended before the questions began.